Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Othello, and today we get to hear from Othello in Act 1, Scene 3, where he gets to defend himself because Brabantio is all up in his face saying, you bewitched my daughter and I want to have you arrested and all that sort of thing. But they had to take this quarrel in front of the Duke because the Duke wants Othello to go to Cyprus to fight a war against the Turkish, who they for a second thought were going to go somewhere else, but it turns out they're actually, going to Cyprus. So they're all in front of the Duke right now, and Othello is like, I didn't use charms or magic. I'll tell you the story, and if you can find the charms and magic in it, then more power to you, but I didn't use any. And Brabantio is like, I don't buy it. It's he bewitched my daughter, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, Othello's like, well, go get her too, and you can ask her how and why she fell in love with me. So Iago and a couple of guys have gone to get Desdemona, and Othello, who by his own admittance is not a very flowery speaker, says, okay, I'll tell you my story. And they're like, yeah, okay, let's hear this fun. And he says, her father loved me, oft invited me, still questioned me the story of my life from year to year, the battle, sieges, fortune that I have passed. I ran through it, even from my boyish days to the very moment that he bade me tell it, wherein I spoke of most disastrous chances, of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth escapes in the imminent deadly breach, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery, of my redemption thence, and portents in my traveller's history, wherein of Antar's vast and deserts idle, rough quarries, rocks, hills, whose head touch heaven, it was my hint to speak, such was my process, and of the cannibals that each others eat, and the anthropophagi and men whose heads grew beneath their shoulders, these things to hear, would Desdemona seriously incline. But still the house affairs would draw her hence, which, ever as she could with haste dispatch, she'll come again, and with a greedy ear devour up my discourse, which, I observing, took once a pliant hour, and found good means to draw from her a prayer of earnest heart, that I would all my pilgrimage dilate, whereof by parcels she had something heard, but not instinctively. I did consent, and often did beguile her of her tears, when I did speak of some distressful stroke that my youth suffered. My story being done, she gave me for my pains a world of kisses. She swore in faith 'twas strange, 'twas passing strange, 'twas pitiful, 'twas wondrous pitiful. She wished she had not heard it, yet she wished that heaven had made her such a man. She thanked me, and bade me, if I had a friend that loved her, I should but teach him how to tell my story, and that would woo her. Upon this hint I spake. She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. This only is the witchcraft I have used. Here comes the lady, let her witness it. So, Othello, in his not flowery language, gets to tell us a beautiful tale of how he has been repeatedly paraded out in front of Brabantio's friends to tell his story, to tell the story of his life, of the battles that he fought, of when he was captured and when he was sold as a slave, and how he escaped from slavery, and the caves that he lived in, and he met cannibals, and he traveled all over the place, and he saw all these amazing things. And since it was Brabantio that kept telling him to share these stories for and in front of Brabantio's friends, Desdemona was around, and she'd always be sort of listening as best she could. Even though she wasn't like invited to listen, she'd be listening as best she could until she had to go and take care of something else, and then she would, take care of that as quick as she could, and she would come back so she could continue listening to him. And at one point he got her by herself for just a moment, and she asked to hear his whole story because she'd only heard little snippets of it over time as she kept having to be interrupted and go elsewhere. So he told her just one-to-one his whole story, and she cried, and when it was done she showered him with kisses and said that if he knew somebody that was in love with her, that man would just have to tell that story and she would be in love with him. Which he's like, yeah, I'm kind of in love with her too. So she had fallen in love with him and his stories and the life that he led and the dangers that he faced and all of these sorts of things. And he fell in love with her because she listened to them and empathized with them and all of that sort of thing. So he's like, if that's witchcraft, then fine, I bewitched her. But then she's coming in, so she comes in, and of course, and the Duke, after hearing this, is like, yeah, my daughter totally would have fallen in love with that too. And Brabantio is like, no, I don't buy it, I don't believe it, there's no way that this could have happened, there's no way that my daughter could be in love with you, and blah blah blah. And there's still just a little bit of fighting back and forth, and Brabantio like goes so far as to disown Desdemona. He's like, I'm done. I'm just done. Like, thank goodness I don't have any other kids, because after I learned this about my kids, if I knew that this was a thing, no, I couldn't handle that with another kid. So thank God that there was only one of you, because I can just walk away and just be done and just, never mind, you're dead to me, essentially is what he says. He's like, go ahead and take Othello and have him attend to the state business. So then they're like, okay, Othello, now that that's in order, we need you to go fight a war in Cyprus. And Othello's like, okay, but while I'm gone, Desdemona needs to be taken care of. She needs to stay somewhere that is appropriate for her station in life. And the Duke is like, she should just stay at her dad's. And Brabantio's like, nope. And Othello's like, nope. And Desdemona's like, nope. And she gets to expound on her nope tomorrow when we get into the next monologue. So I will see you then for that. Mwah.